Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us. This morning, as you know, we got a busy morning. Senator Capito and I we're going to be in and out, and I appreciate Ben's willingness to hold the gavel when we're away. But call this business meeting to order this morning. Once we have a quorum, the committee will vote on 5 nominations. 4 of the nominations are to the Environmental Protection Agency. They are Amanda Howe to be Assistant Administrator for Mission Support, Carlton Waterhouse to be Assistant Administrator of Land and Emergency Management, David Ullman to be Assistant Administrator of Enforcement and Compliance and Assurance, and Christopher Frey to be Assistant Administrator for Research and Development. Senator Capito and I have agreed, I believe, to consider Ms. Howe's nomination by voice vote. Does that sound good?
That's correct.
Great. Remaining EPA noms will be recorded votes by roll call, and we will also vote by voice on the nomination of Jennifer Clyburn Reed to be the federal co-chair of the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission. We'll also be voting on 3 bills to rename federal facilities in West Virginia, Tennessee, and Florida, along with the 4 GSA resolutions. The committee will vote on all of these items en bloc by voice. And when we've completed our votes, we will immediately move on to this morning's oversight hearing on Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and after that, take a nap. I don't know about the rest of you. I've had a full day already, and but no, we won't take naps. And we'll move on to the oversight portion with respect to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and we're happy to see our commissioners join us today. The nominees we will vote on in a couple of minutes are all, I believe, outstanding nominees. Each is fully qualified to lead critically important offices within the Environmental Protection Agency and the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission. I'm very impressed with the competence and passion that each of these nominees brings with them. That's also why I'm pleased to say that I'll be voting yes on each of these nominees. And I urge our colleagues to do the same. And with that, let me turn over to Senator Capito. Any comments that she might like to make? Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for the calling this business meeting today. I'm delighted that one of the items that we'll be considering today is a bill to name the federal building and courthouse in Wheeling, West Virginia, after Judge Frederick Stamp. He was appointed to be a U.S. judge by President George H.W. Bush, in 1990, and Judge Stamp's life of exceptional service has made an indelible mark on West Virginia, its legal community and education system. He's a wonderful community member, as is his entire family. So I'm very pleased that that will be indelibly imprinted on the courthouse in Wheeling, West Virginia. I'm also glad that among the GSA items that the committee will consider is a resolution approving repairs and alterations to the U.S. Post Office and Courthouse building in Clarksburg, West Virginia. My last visit there showed that this project will ensure that the building meets the long-term needs also for security while maintaining its historic integrity. It needs a lot of help, I can tell you that. We have a number of nominees, as you said, that we are voting on today. I look forward to supporting Dr. Jennifer Clyburn Reed to lead the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission and Ms. Amanda Howe to lead the Office of Mission Support at the EPA. However, while I appreciate their willingness to serve, I cannot support the other 3 EPA nominees under consideration. Coming from an energy-producing state where many operations are subject to EPA regulations, I remain troubled by Dr. Carlton Waterhouse's views on the energy sector and capitalism more generally based on his responses. I am not assured that he can approach his job from an unbiased perspective, especially when addressing the energy sector. The overarching issue affecting my position on all of today's nominees, especially Mr. David Ullman and Dr. Chris Frey, is the lack of timely responsiveness from EPA and the rest of the administration on critical oversight issues. I've had numerous conversations with the administrator on this. Since April, I have asked EPA and the White House several times how the new Nationally Determined Contribution, or NDC, under the Paris Agreement was calculated. I am still waiting for that information on how it was developed. I know it's there, it's just that they won't disclose it. In October, the Rhodium Group released a report that found meeting the U.S. pledge would demand steep emissions reductions from industries essential to our economy. The report claimed around 40% of the administration's goal may be achieved by targeting the power sector alone. That is an attack that could not come at a worse time, as inflation, fanned by the previous reconciliation package, drives up the cost of energy and ultimately other household goods. The U.S. Energy Information Administration has already warned Americans to expect higher heating bills this winter with surging natural gas prices in the U.S. and in Europe. Meanwhile, the administration is plowing forward to pursue legislation and regulation on the power sector and the oil and gas industry. We are seeing this already through the reckless tax and spending spree that President Biden wants to move through reconciliation. This ill-conceived effort contains a wide variety of harmful policies, including a new fee on methane, which is in reality a natural gas tax. This natural gas tax would raise fuel prices and disproportionately impact low-income households across the country, yet another significant financial impact on everyday Americans. And it comes even as EPA and the White House have just recently announced an aggressive new rule on methane from energy production. I remain ever hopeful, as I always am, that the administration will change its posture, but at least come forward with the information that we have very specifically required and asked for, so that we can have the transparency that all of these nominees promise, but once they achieve their offices, we find it hasn't come forward as quickly and as transparently as we had hoped. So thank you for bringing us together today, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you so much. Do we have a quorum? Are we ready to vote? No?
We are not.
Okay, all right. Let me just, a point of clarification. One of the nominees, his last name is a judge. I think his name is Stamp.
That's correct.
And I mentioned this to Senator Capito. I said, it's ironic. We have a judge named Stamp. They're naming the federal building after him. It said, it's too bad we can't name a post office after him. And you told me, what did you tell me?
In reality, the post office is in the building.
How cool is that?
We try to do it well in West Virginia.
There you go. All right. Who else would like to be recognized? Anybody else? Like, we're waiting for a quorum. Anybody, please? Okay. I thank our colleagues for your patience. We've reached out to the offices of those senators who are not yet in attendance. So hopefully they'll be here soon. To our colleagues, we're waiting for one more member. Sheldon's en route, and then we'll get going. All right. I think we're ready. Senator Whitehouse, welcome. Glad to see you. Now I want to call up presidential nomination, 722 Carlton Waterhouse, Virginia, to be Assistant Administrator of Land and Emergency Management of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably to the Senate. Is there a second? Second. The clerk will recall the roll.
No.
Aye.
No by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth. Aye. Ms. Ernst. No. Ms. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Randolph.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kelly. Aye. Ms. Lomas.
No.
Mr. Markey. Aye. Mr. Merkley. Aye. Mr. Padilla. Aye. Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Mr. Shelby.
No by proxy.
Ms. Stabenow.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
No by proxy.
Mr. Whitehouse. Aye. Mr. Wicker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Chairman.
Carper votes aye.
Chairman, the ayes have 10 and the ayes have 10.
Thanks very much. Let me now call up the presidential nominations, number 731, David Ullman of Michigan, to be Assistant Administrator of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Mr. Bozeman. No. Mrs. Scavo.
No.
Mr. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
No by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Ernst.
No.
Mr. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Inhofe.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Lomas. Mr. Markey. Aye. Mr. Merkley. Aye. Mr. Padilla. Aye. Mr. Sanders.
Aye.
Mr. Shelby.
No by proxy.
Ms. Stabenow.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
No by proxy.
Mr. Whitehouse. Aye. Mr. Wicker.
No by proxy.
Chairman.
Carper votes aye.
Chairman, the ayes are 10 and the ayes are 9.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call a presidential nomination, number 1224, Henry Christopher Frey of North Carolina, to be Assistant Administrator of Research and Development of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Bozeman. No. Mrs. Scavo.
No.
Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Yes by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Ernst.
No.
Mr. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Inhofe.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kelly. Aye. Ms. Lomas.
No.
Mr. Mark. Aye. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Padilla. Aye. Mr. Sanders.
Aye.
Mr. Shelby.
No by proxy.
Ms. Stabenow.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
No by proxy.
Mr. Whitehouse. Aye. Mr. Wicker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Chairman.
Carper votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, the yeas are 11 and nays are 9.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call up two presidential nominations to consider en bloc, along with remaining business for today. First, I call up presidential nomination number 1224, Jennifer Clyburn Reed of South Carolina, to be federal co-chair of the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission. And second, I call up presidential nomination 731, Amanda Howe of Virginia, to be assistant administrator for mission support of the Environmental Protection Agency. Finally, I'd like to call up H.R. 4660 to designate the federal building and U.S. courthouse located in 1125 Chaplain Street in Wheeling, West Virginia, as the Frederick P. Stamp Jr. Federal Building and U.S. Courthouse. H.R. Also calling up for consideration H.R. 390 to redesignate the federal building located at 167 North Main Street in Memphis, Tennessee, as the Odell Horton Federal Building. S 2938 to designate the federal building located at 111 North Adams Street in Tallahassee, Florida, as the Joseph Woodrow Hatchet United States Courthouse and Federal Building, in addition to 4 GSA resolutions. We'll now consider these two nominations, along with H.R. 4660, H.R. 390, S 2938, and the GSA resolutions en bloc by voice vote. And I move to approve and report these matters favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. In opinion of the chair, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and measures and nominations are favorably reported. For the record, the chair observes that a quorum is present in the room, and now we can turn to this today's hearing. I want to thank everybody for coming here, adjusting your schedules to be here so we can do our job, report these noms and bills out. Thanks so much. Bernie, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready, Ben? And I'd like to invite the chairman and the commissioners to please come to the witness table. Nice to see you.
How are you? How are you?
Good morning.
Again. Thank you. Thanks so much.
How are you?
Good morning. Yes.
Welcome back.
Well, colleagues and witnesses, guests, I think we have everybody in their respective seats. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Wright, how are you? How's your mom? Do our best. Well, today we're going to hear from 3 members currently serving on the Nuclear Regulatory Committee, or Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And I want to start by welcoming each of them back to this committee, Chairman Hanson, Commissioner Barron, and Commissioner Wright. We want to thank you all, first of all, for being here. We want to thank you for your service. It's great to see each of you. This hearing is an opportunity for our committee to examine the work of the NRC, important work of the NRC, understand what is working, and to learn what we can do together to address any challenges that this important agency is facing. And we appreciate the commissioners joining us today because it's important for us to hear directly from you. We want to ensure that the NRC has the resources it needs to maintain the safety of existing nuclear facilities and also to prepare for the future. This includes the work required to develop and deploy the next generation of reactors, as well as new advanced nuclear technology and materials. As many of you know, I believe that safe nuclear power plays an important role in our efforts to address the greatest challenge that we face on Earth at this time, and that is the climate crisis. America's nuclear reactors provide, if I'm not mistaken, 1/5 of our nation's electricity and just about half of all emission-free energy in this country of ours. Think about that, just about half. Nuclear energy is key to reaching net zero emissions economy-wide, and the NRC is critical to ensuring that our nuclear energy is safe and that it's reliable. In August, I had the opportunity to visit the Salem Hope Creek nuclear power plants just across the Delaware River in the neighboring state of New Jersey, along with Chairman Hanson. Thank you for being there with us. I describe that as my favorite part of Delaware, but it's really in New Jersey. So. But actually, part of the high water mark on the Delaware River on the New Jersey side actually does belong to Delaware. So we never got control of the nuclear plants. But anyway, quite impressed with what we saw and heard during our visit, and I suspect that the chairman was as well. These two plants employ more than 1,600 people. A bunch of them are from New Jersey, but a surprising number are from Delaware too, and some from PA. But they keep electricity rates affordable and help make the electric grid more reliable. More importantly, they do all these things safely. Let me say that again. More importantly, they do all of these things safely. The NRC remains the global model for nuclear safety agencies, and the Commission's work to maintain safe and secure nuclear power is an essential tool in our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, our existing aging and inefficient nuclear fleet is struggling to keep up with our growing needs for safe, climate-friendly power. Several nuclear plants have closed prematurely in recent years. Several more are expected to close this decade. But from this adversity comes opportunity. And now American innovators can rise to the challenges and work to develop the next generation of reactors and technologies. Doing so will place our nation at the forefront of the revolution to clean energy, all while creating jobs and economic opportunity for the American people. That's something we all should be proud of and we should all support. And as we work to meet this moment, we open the door to another critical opportunity, and that is the chance to right the wrongs of the past and address the historic impact of pollution on disadvantaged and underserved communities across our country. As a founder and co-chair, along with Senator from Illinois and also Senator Cory Booker, I think it's essential for the NRC to bring that focus on equity to their work as we pave the way for a new era of non-polluting and safe nuclear power. So I'm pleased that the NRC is currently undergoing a review of its environmental justice policies and programs. I hope and expect that these efforts will empower those communities historically left behind by our energy policies and will give them a seat at the table in the NRC's decision-making processes and hopefully within the nuclear industry more broadly. These are good efforts underway at the Commission. So in closing, let me just add that I look forward to hearing from each of you about how this committee can better support your efforts. And together I think we can, actually I think we must, ensure that a revitalized nuclear industry is a significant part of our national strategy to combat climate change by providing safe, secure, clean, and affordable energy to all Americans. Before we hear from our witnesses, I'd like for us to hear from Senator Capito for any comments that she wants to make. Senator Capito, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Carper, and thank the witnesses for coming before us today and for your service. This comes at a very critical time. Energy prices continue to rise as the weather's turning colder and families need to heat their homes. My constituents are paying more at the pump to take their kids to school or to go to their jobs. Higher energy prices are driving inflation, and make no mistake, this is a hidden tax on our working families. Despite this, the game plan is to continue to push policies, I think, that will make the situation worse. Unaccountable White House staff, led by climate czar Gina McCarthy, are developing and implementing an extreme environmental agenda. President Biden's administration is taking drastic steps. that will hurt energy affordability and electric reliability. The EPA is pushing regulations to limit production of American energy. EPA Administrator Michael Regan has stated that he is going to push the envelope in exercising the agency's regulatory authority. It seems this reckless tax and spending spree would increase energy costs on all American families and businesses. It will harm our competitiveness. It will reduce reliability of our energy systems. It's just a bad deal. It would raise energy prices through a natural gas tax. These policies will raise energy costs and undermine base load electric generation, threatening families and businesses with more frequent and wholly preventable blackouts. Instead of pursuing policies that will accelerate inflation and undermine our grid, we should advance the solutions we're going to hear about today that reduce costs and increase reliability, all while improving the environment. This means pursuing all clean energy sources, including carbon capture, natural gas, and nuclear. The NRC enables the safe use of nuclear energy in the United States. It's instrumental to ensure our public confidence, that public confidence is strengthened when the Commission operates as it was intended. The Congress established the Commission as a 5-member body. It functions most effectively with a full slate of members. The Commission is currently operating with just 3 members who we have here with us today. In March, Chairman Carper and I wrote to President Biden asking that he promptly put forth a bipartisan pairing of qualified nominees, 1 Democrat and 1 Republican, but the President has yet to do so. A full slate of commissioners should be in place to make critical decisions for how new nuclear technologies are licensed, regulated, and operated. In 2018, Congress passed the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act, which I co-sponsored, with overwhelming bipartisan support. That law, which was a product of this committee, requires that the NRC develop safety rules for the next generation of advanced nuclear technologies. This past May, I wrote to the NRC Chairman Hanson to applaud the Commission and its staff for their diligent work so far on those rules. Our innovators need safety rules that are both predictable and flexible. Nuclear engineers and entrepreneurs who are investing time and money to develop new reactor designs need usable rules, and they need to know the rules of the road. I look forward to receiving an update on the rulemaking as well as other related advanced nuclear initiatives. The Commission is looking to update existing policies for new and emerging technologies to guide review of applications submitted before the rulemaking is complete. In addition to setting the stage for new nuclear technologies, the Commission should modernize its policies to allow for today's reactors to focus on the most important safety issues. In 2019, the NRC staff proposed recommendations to the Commission for common sense changes to what is known as the reactor oversight process, the regulations that guide the oversight and inspection rules for operating nuclear power plants. I joined 7 of my colleagues in asking the Commission to support these proposals, which were based on thorough analysis and review of historical data. I'm disappointed that the Commission did not act. The staff is now, to my understanding, reworking its proposals. While the Commission reviews its policies to ensure the safe operation of nuclear power plants, Congress can build on previous bipartisan efforts like the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act to secure the future of our country's nuclear energy sector. In July, I introduced the American Nuclear Infrastructure Act to preserve and expand our use of nuclear energy. Joining me on the bipartisan legislation are 6 co-sponsors, including Senator Whitehouse and Senator Graham on this committee. Last year, the EPW committee passed that bill by 16-5. Chairman Carper and Senator Cardin voted in favor of that bill. I look forward to working with Chairman Carper to advance this legislation again this Congress to ensure Americans have access to clean, reliable, affordable energy. With that, I yield back.
Let me thank the ranking member. We'll now hear from the commissioners of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, starting with its chair, the Honorable Christopher Hanson.
Thank you, Senator Cardin, Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and distinguished members of the committee. My colleagues and I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission's licensing and oversight activities this morning. The NRC is an independent federal agency established to protect the public health and safety through the regulation of commercial nuclear plants, research, test, and training reactors, nuclear fuel cycle facilities, and civilian use of nuclear materials. Additionally, the agency regulates transportation, storage, disposal, export and import of nuclear materials and waste, the export and import of nuclear reactors and production facilities, and the export of nuclear facility components. The Commission last appeared before this committee in March 2020. Since that time, the NRC has had to respond to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic while protecting the safety of our workforce and continuing to perform our important safety and security mission. To ensure that the agency could maintain its regulatory oversight role during the pandemic, the NRC implemented a number of interim procedures. These procedures enabled the NRC to continue inspections and other key oversight activities during the pandemic. They also allowed the agency to stay engaged with the public despite limitations on in-person meetings. The NRC's incredible workforce has remained committed to the agency's mission despite all the challenges and uncertainty associated with the pandemic. The NRC began its transition to a hybrid work environment on November 7th, just last month, and we've taken care to ensure our buildings are safe for employees, contractors, and visitors. In this regard, we've been fully implementing the administration's executive orders requiring COVID-19 vaccination for federal employees, as well as federal contractors and subcontractors. The NRC has made significant progress in implementing the provisions of the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act since its enactment in January 2019. The NRC submitted 12 reports to Congress and has made progress implementing other provisions, including the requirement to complete a rulemaking for a technology-inclusive regulatory framework for advanced nuclear reactors, also known as Part 53. The NRC remains on a schedule that would allow for publication of the final rule significantly ahead of the NEMA deadline of December 2027. The NRC continues to provide licensing and oversight for 93 operating commercial nuclear power plants and 31 research and test reactors around the country. Currently, 92 of 93 reactors are in NRC's highest performance category and have fully met our safety and security performance objectives. Only one reactor is in the second performance category, needing to resolve items of low safety significance. Since December 2019, the NRC has approved subsequent license renewals for 6 reactors, extending each reactor's period of operation from 60 to 80 years. The NRC is currently reviewing several other applications for subsequent license renewal. The NRC is also actively preparing for the completion of construction and anticipated transition to operation of the Vogtle reactor units in Georgia. NRC inspections are proceeding in accordance with the licensee's continued work at the site. Regarding small modular reactors, or SMRs, the NRC has completed its technical review of NuScale's application for certification of its SMR design. The NRC is also engaged in pre-application discussions with vendors for 3 other SMR designs, as well as a possible combined license application that might reference one of these designs. In the Nuclear Materials and Safety Program, the NRC completed its safety and environmental reviews for a consolidated interim storage facility in Andrews, Texas, and the agency issued a license to interim storage partners in September 2021. In addition, the NRC approved a license amendment in June that authorizes a 16-centrifuge cascade for uranium enrichment at the American Centrifuge Plant in Piketon, Ohio, to demonstrate the production of high-assay, low-enriched uranium for the Department of Energy. 26 NRC-licensed reactors are currently in decommissioning. 3 additional power reactors publicly indicated or submitted formal notifications to the NRC that they will be permanently shut down before the end of 2025. The Commission recently approved a proposed rule to address decommissioning reactors. Decommissioning reactors are currently subject to the same requirements as operating reactors, despite significant differences. This rulemaking removes inapplicable requirements but does not reduce safety. It will provide for a safe and more efficient decommissioning process, ending with unrestricted release of the reactor sites, and it should reduce the need for license amendment requests and requests for regulatory exemptions. In closing, the NRC and its dedicated employees are hard at work and remain deeply committed to the agency's safety mission. Chairman Carper, Senator Cardin, Ranking Member Capito, and distinguished members of the committee, this concludes my formal testimony. On behalf of the Commission, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this morning and for your support for the vital mission of the NRC. And we'd be pleased to respond to any questions.
Well, Chairman Hanson, let me first point out that Senator Carper is in another committee where his time is up for questioning, and he'll be back shortly. Senator Capito had a similar commitment. Don't take it personally.
Not at all.
You're left with Senator Whitehouse and myself. But we'll now hear from Commissioner Jeff Barron.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. It's great to be back with my colleagues to discuss NRC's important work. I want to briefly focus on three pressing challenges affecting NRC: the fight against climate change, the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the pursuit of environmental justice. I see NRC's nexus to climate change in two main areas: the operating fleet and new reactors. For the long-term operation of existing nuclear power plants, NRC's role is to provide strong safety and security standards and rigorous independent oversight. The reactor oversight process has generally been an effective safety framework, so if we're going to make a particular change, there should be a solid safety case for it. Of course, NRC needs to be open to and ready for new technologies that could improve safety, such as digital instrumentation and accident-tolerant fuels. The other main climate-related rule for NRC is the licensing and oversight of new reactors. New reactor designs have the potential to be safer than existing designs. The challenge is striking a reasonable balance between the value of new safety attributes and maintaining a prudent degree of defense in depth. Responding to the COVID-19 pandemic has been another major priority for the agency. Resident inspectors are now back on site, and the regions have returned to in-person safety and security inspections. In fact, the staff has set a goal of getting back to normal levels of oversight this year. During the pandemic, some inspections were performed remotely out of necessity. I see that as a temporary measure that made sense during an extremely unusual and challenging public health emergency. Going forward, there is broad agreement on the value of and need for in-person safety and security inspections. There's just no substitute for having independent NRC inspectors on site. NRC must also pursue environmental justice. The staff is performing a systematic review of the agency's programs, policies, and activities. They are consulting with a broad range of stakeholders and developing options for improving how the agency pursues environmental justice. In my view, we must meet the moment and not settle for doing things the way they've always been done. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We'll now hear from Commissioner David Wright.
Thank you, Senator Cardin, and good morning to Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and the other members of the committee as well. I appreciate the opportunity to appear. First, I'd like to thank my colleagues for their insights into the matters that are before the Commission, and to the Chairman for his leadership during these challenging times. I hope that the next time we are before you, we will be a full complement, because we work best with 5 commissioners. So thanks to the efforts of our COVID task force, we did begin reentry on November 7th. This gives us the opportunity to collaborate in person again, as well as meet employees who onboarded while we were on full-time telework. That in-person interaction helps us meet our mission in the most effective way possible. There are many exciting things happening at the NRC, including advanced reactor applications under review, the Part 53 rulemaking efforts, subsequent license renewal applications, digital INC, accident-tolerant fuel application reviews, and the decommissioning rulemaking. In these and in all matters, my focus and the staff's focus is safety. There have been recent media statements and social media posts regarding NRC decisions and rulemakings suggesting that the staff's recommendations are not safe or simply reflect the industry viewpoint, including on the proposed decommissioning rule. For the record, I do not agree with those statements. Our staff members are committed professionals dedicated to meeting the NRC safety mission. As you know, our safety mission is apolitical, as are the NRC's principles of good regulation. The staff's findings and matters before the NRC are based on data, expertise, and experience, and are informed by input from external stakeholders. At times, the staff is not unanimous in its recommendations, but processes are in place to ensure that all staff perspectives, including differing views, are considered before making recommendations to the Commission. While there may be different policy views on those recommendations, each recommendation staff provides the Commission meets the NRC safety mission. I make sure I understand each of these points of view, as well as my colleagues' perspectives, before reaching a decision. I'd like to thank the staff for its unwavering focus and dedication to the shared goal of the Commission, the staff, and our licensees, which is the safe and secure use of civilian radioactive materials. And thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, again, I thank all 3 of you for your service and for your testimony here today. You obviously have tremendous challenges, and I think we all hope that we can get a full complement of the commissioners nominated and approved as quickly as possible. I sort of want to start this round of questioning dealing with the workforce issues, if I might. You have tremendous responsibility. We're very proud of the workforce. I'm very proud of your location in Rockville, Maryland, where your headquarters are located. I've been there many times, talked to many of your workforce about the challenges that you face. You clearly have to deal with the safety of our current reactor inventory, as well as dealing with decommissioning and dealing with the new reactors that are being put online, and new technologies, legislation passed by Congress that you have to implement. We recognize all that. In addition, you have Project AIM 2020, which dealt with downsizing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Put on top of that COVID-19, which changed your method of dealing with challenges through remote work environment. And as I look at the demographics of your workforce, I see an aging workforce. I see a concern as to whether we are attracting the type of talent that's needed in NRC moving forward. So I would just like you to share with us your strategies for making sure that we have the workforce we need to carry out this incredibly important responsibility. Chairman Carper and Ranking Member Capito pointed out the importance of nuclear energy, and I strongly agree with that. Half of our carbon-free energy reductions is through nuclear. So it's a critical part of our current energy portfolio and an important source moving forward with dealing with both energy and climate. So what are we doing to make sure that we have the talented workforce that we need, most of which are technical individuals, as we move forward under this environment?
Senator Cardin, thank you for that. This issue of what we call strategic workforce planning is a very high priority for me, and I know my colleagues have spoken on it in public and other venues as well, and making sure that we've got the workforce of the future. Let me highlight a couple of things. As we've aggressively implemented a number of computer-based tools and other tools to identify the skill sets that we're going to need going into the future. So that, you know, maybe materials engineers for advanced reactors or health physicists or other kinds of skill sets, and we're actively recruiting for those people. We need experienced and mid-career people to step into senior technical roles and leadership positions within the agency, certainly. But one of the other big areas that we really need to focus on is attracting younger talent as well. In my visits to nuclear plants this summer, I was always asking, you know, what's the percentage of the workforce at a plant under the age of 30? And on average, you know, plants were coming in the 10 to 15% range. Well, at the NRC, it's actually 3%. And so this is a big area. And we reinstituted our apprenticeship program, what we're calling the Nuclear Regulator Apprenticeship Network, to take people that are right out of school and bring them in and cycle them through the various offices with the agency over a 2-year period, so that when they come out, they've seen a lot of the agency and they're ready to hit the ground running as having experience in a number of areas. We had our first class of that 2 years ago with 22 folks. We're about to recruit another class, and with additional resources in our human capital organization, we're hoping to be able to make that an annual program as well, to get more talent in the agency so that we can have that culture and knowledge transfer from the folks that are going to be retiring out over time.
I would just add that your budget is primarily financed through the industry itself, and we recognize that nationwide we have a real challenge in regards to workforce issues. This is not unique to one agency. We have a national shortage, particularly of trained individuals. So that if you need some additional help from us, please let us know. Because I tell you, we are deeply concerned by that percentage of those under 30 being 3%. And we want you to have the brightest minds coming out of our universities that are going to help us deal with the new technologies and nuclear power, as well as dealing with the challenges of how we deal with waste and material, in addition to your current responsibility of safety. So you have a pretty heavy portfolio, and we would welcome any thought you might have as to how we can help you in order to retain the best possible workforce. Let me ask one additional question as our leadership is settling into their seats here, and that is the economic issue of nuclear power. Nuclear power has not enjoyed the same type of tax incentives as other energy sources have, particularly those that are friendly towards our environment on carbon emissions. I've introduced legislation dealing with the production tax credit. It's bipartisan. It's included in the Build Back Better budget on the House side. We've had many members of this committee that have been interested in this on both sides of the aisle. Same thing on the Senate Finance Committee, where Senator Carper and I both serve on as well. Could you just talk for a moment as to the need moving forward with maintaining our nuclear reactors safely, as well as going to the next generation of nuclear reactors that have a level playing field in regards to the tax code to make it economically feasible for the investments to be made to make sure we have nuclear power moving forward?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for that. Yeah, as you know, our focus is really going to be on the safety and maintaining the safety of each of these plants. As many people in the industry have acknowledged to me, there's no future for nuclear power without the safe operation of the current fleet. So that's just the opening stakes, as you will, into the larger energy conversation. There is a nexus, of course, with the economics because of the economic pressures, I think, on some of these plants. Then there is tends to be a focus to streamline and highly optimize the operations in a way that is not currently impacting safety, and we don't want to impact safety into the future. So we're cognizant of the economics, but our focus is really on making sure that all of our licensees, whether long existing or new or prospective, understand our standards.
I appreciate that answer, but the reality is if it's not economically feasible because of the competitive disadvantage, that it does put additional challenges on operating safely. So it does affect your mission. And I think the economics of energy is an important part of our overall policies here. And we just welcome your thoughts as to making sure that we stay competitive so that safety is not compromised. Because I think your point is very well taken. We cannot compromise safety. But we also need to make sure that it's a level playing field for nuclear power. So with that, I'll turn the gavel back over to Senator Carper and ask whether I got any additional staff as a result of taking over.
I'm just glad you didn't annex part of Delaware on the Delmarva Peninsula and take it into Maryland while I was away. Senator Capito, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you. Sorry we had to slip out. There's lots, as you can tell, lots going on right now with simultaneous committee meetings. As you all know, Congress created the DOE's Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program to establish public-private partnerships, and then the BIF put $2.5 billion in funding to support this program. So that's a major investment and much welcomed and a bipartisan effort. To successfully build and operate these reactors, the NRC must efficiently review and approve these designs. So, Chairman Hanson, my understanding is that there are already two applications that were accepted last year that will be going into this program. How is the Commission preparing to review those in light of the new funding opportunities?
Senator Capito, thank you for that. One of the key ways that we're preparing is by reviewing what we call topical reports from both X-Energy and TerraPower, the two ARDP awardees. And what those really are, they're technical reports that they submit to us for kind of early review. What that does is it allows us to resolve any technical questions that we might have about their design. And it also gets them into the regulatory process early before there's a formal application. So we can have a very interactive process with them. We can learn about their design. They have an opportunity to go back and refine their design as needed. And we can do that. So that when, for instance, TerraPower is supposed to come in with their application in 2023, we're fully prepared to review that efficiently and effectively.
So I guess the basic question there is the protocols are already firmly established on the rules of the road are already established in this particular case for these two projects? In other words, they know what they're going to be, they know how to formulate their applications. The rules of the road are explicit for them right now to be able to, as you're moving forward the process.
Yeah, that's right. Because our advanced reactor rulemaking is still ongoing, they're going to, I think, choose alternative pathways for licensing for their reactors in the near term.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wright, in 2018, the NRC stood up what is called the Vogel Readiness Group, which was tasked specifically to oversee activities associated with the completion of the only 2 new nuclear reactors currently under development, and that is by Southern Company's Vogel site in Georgia. This organizational approach may be useful to replicate for the Commission's review of the ARDP reactors. Is there a structure that NRC would consider for these first reactors that mirrors these principles that are embodied in the Vogel Readiness Group?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, ma'am, I think that the NRC is going to take lessons learned from everything that we're doing right now, and the Vogel Readiness Group is one of those things that has performed very well. Because the different technologies that are coming before us, be it the TerraPower thing, be it NuScale, be it Oklo, or be it Kairos or whatever, they have different needs, requirements. We look at tiger teams, so I will loosely call it that, to try to, once we get a team working on something, they stay with that. So they're not bouncing back and forth to different people. And I think that will add some consistency to it. And if what we learn from one, we can apply to others as well.
So would you anticipate in creating some sort of group that's exclusively focused on reviewing these 2 demonstration projects? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would think that we are going to do something very similar. It may not be exactly, but I would think.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, did you want to weigh in on that?
No, that's right, Senator. We're looking at kind of what we're calling a core team approach, where we have a dedicated group of people that will follow that application all the way through and then can kind of bring in extra expertise as we go along. We think that that's been kind of a proven method for improving the efficiency of these reviews and decreasing the need to kind of educate multiple groups of staff within the agency.
I alluded in my opening comments the fact that the Commission did not act on the reactor oversight process that was formulated. What are the next steps for the staff and for the Commission to improve and modernize that?
Well, Senator, as you noted, they withdrew the paper, I think,
right,
because they had updated information. They're looking at those papers again and incorporating that updated information, and I expect that we'll see that paper again. That was certainly the basis of my approval of the withdrawal, was that we would see these issues again in some revised form. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't have an update on the specifics. I'd be happy to follow up.
Let me just ask a real generalized question here from the view of the American public, who I believe believes in an all-of-the-above energy plan for the country. And you heard by my opening statements some frustrations that I felt with the direction that we're going. Nuclear is the least talked about, but in some ways could be the most powerful dual tool in terms of generating the power, but also in an environmental way that doesn't have the emission challenges that things that coal and natural gas that my state produces very well for the country, I'll say. How do you tell the American public, and if I could take the time just to ask all 3 of you, how do you very quickly tell the country that nuclear needs to have a future and has a future, and any concerns from the past, how they're being allayed? If you can do that in a minute or so, I think it would be important for the American public to hear that. So we'll start with Mr. Barron.
Sure. We always walk a careful line here because it's important for all of us. I think the chairman will say this too. We don't promote nuclear power. It's important for us to be neutral on it. We all have our individual opinions, but we, as an agency, don't promote it. Our focus is on safety and security. And what I want the American people to know is that is what we are focused on every day, to make sure we have the right standards in place and rigorous, strong oversight, and we have good processes for new reactor applications. As I talk to licensees, when the conversation turns to climate and how are you going to get to net zero, the focus turns to nuclear in a lot of cases. And so that could mean we get a lot of additional applications in the future. We need to be ready for that. We need to have the framework in place. We need to be using these strategies that my colleagues talked about to make sure we have a good process for reviewing new reactor applications.
Chairman Hanson?
Yeah, I would like the American people to know that nuclear power has a long history of safe operation in this country, overseen by a rigorous independent regulator here at the NRC and the NRC staff. I think, as Commissioner Barron said, we're well poised with our technical staff to license new nuclear technologies into the future, and we're modernizing our approaches. We are building on what we've learned over that long history of safe operation to make our oversight of the current fleet more efficient and more effective. Senator, as you've noted, a lot of utilities, the cornerstone of their carbon-free electricity plans are the continued operation of existing reactors today. NRC will continue to be an efficient and effective regulator of those sites.
Mr. Wright?
Thank you. So external awareness is really part of our mission as well, to be externally aware of what's going on around us. And when I go visit plants, specifically, where a plant is located, that's probably the biggest support area around that plant. And as the further away you get from a plant, it becomes less and less talked about, so to speak. So the support for the plants are right closest to where they're at. And you hear that talked about. So, but one thing I agree with my colleagues, we just need to be sure that when we are engaged with the public, that they know that we're going to make sure they're operated safely.
Thank you. Thank you for the.
You bet. Senator Lumsden, I'm just going to yield to you. So you can go next. And then once you've asked your questions, Senator Whitehouse, you'll be next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hanson, in July of 2020, the NRC and EPA signed a memorandum of understanding regarding the regulation of uranium in situ recovery facilities. The MOU provided clarification of the respective roles and responsibilities of the two agencies, and it was needed. Will you commit that the NRC will uphold this MOU, particularly as the agency proceeds with its consideration of a draft proposed rule regarding uranium in situ recovery facilities?
Senator, thank you for that. The approval of the MOU with EPA was a full commission decision, and it would take a decision by the commission to change that MOU, and that's not a matter before us at this time. So I don't foresee any changes in the immediate future.
So if there were to be a change, the entire commission would have to abrogate the MOU in order to make the rulemaking conform to their new ideas. Is that
I believe that the proposed rule on the in situ recovery that's before us conforms to the MOU.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you. The NRC and the states that have implemented NRC regulation requirements, the agreement states, of which my state of Wyoming is one,
Yes.
have a really good track record on in situ recovery. We make sure that uranium recovery is safe, that it's carried out through regulation, guidance, site-specific licensing considerations, and the expertise of regulatory staff. The regime is comprehensive, and it's working very well to protect the environment. I understand that the NRC is seeking to formalize aspects of the licensing process in the draft proposed rule. In doing so, would you agree that the NRC should reinforce existing management practices that are working well and not duplicate or supplant them?
As a general matter, I think if agreement states are executing the programs that they have in front of them, that there is not a need for the NRC to, as you say, duplicate that effort.
Okay.
We don't do that in other areas, for example.
Okay.
We do inspect state programs on a triennial basis, I believe, for their effectiveness. And we would do that the same thing with Wyoming, I think, coming up. They're a new agreement state, so I think their review is some ways off. But those reviews tend to be generally, right, they tend to be constructive. We want to help states implement their programs effectively.
Well, and that I think that's a worthwhile give and take that occurs during those discussions. And
That's
it's
right.
important that you understand what they're doing, and they understand what you expect of them. So that's reassuring. My next question, thank you, is for all of you. As you know, TerraPower's Natrium Power Plant is going to be built near Kemmer, Wyoming, and we're very, very pleased with that choice. It's a timeline that will allow workers from the coal plant that's slated to be closed to transition to the Natrium plant. Both DOE and the developers have said they can meet the 7-year deadline imposed by Congress, but this will require the NRC to review and approve applications in a streamlined and efficient manner because it's a pretty tight timeline. Congress also passed the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act to push the NRC to move faster on licensing advanced reactors. NRC has been working hard to meet the bill's timelines, and it's clear that meeting these timelines and moving faster is a key priority for Congress. So for all the commissioners, does the NRC have what it needs to ensure that these reactors funded through a public-private partnership will achieve the 2028 goal? And if not, what more do you need from Congress?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for that. At this point, I would say we do have what we need. We've gotten money outside of our regular fee structure for the development of the advanced reactor rulemaking. We are, the Department of Energy, of course, has granted money to the ARDP awardees like TerraPower, and they're using some of that money to consult with us for early licensing engagement. So I think we're on a good track now. To the extent that we need additional resources, if I could, I'll put in a plug for some of our corporate support functions in the IT area to make sure we've got the information technology tools, and in our human capital area so that we've got the people on board that we need to hire the people that we're going to need to review these applications. So it's kind of one step removed. I think we're doing well in the technical areas. Again, the conversation we had with Senator Cardin about the need to backfill a lot of the technical expertise that is going to retire over time, we're actively engaged in that. But at the moment, I think we're in a good situation. So,
Mr.
I agree with the chairman. I think we're well positioned to do this work.
Great. Mr. Wright?
And he did a very good job. There's not much to add to it, except to say we're going to do everything we can not to be a barrier to anything there.
yeah, all said.
I thank the witnesses, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Thanks so much for joining us today. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to ask questions very aligned with Senator Lemus's. I was a original author and sponsor of the Innovation and Modernization Act, and so I'm keenly interested in seeing you implement it effectively. And Senator Barrasso and Crapo and Booker and I wrote to you all recently to give you a well done on moving up the schedule. But recently you extended by 9 months the date in the Part 53 rulemaking for receipt of the proposed rule package. And I'm just wondering what that portends by way of timeline.
Yeah, Senator, thank you. We did the commission did just approve an extension of the timeline, and we didn't do it lightly because we do feel the urgency in getting this rulemaking out. But
as I understand it, you've moved ahead of the anticipated schedule to begin with, so this is slowing down an accelerated schedule.
That's right. Yeah, the original schedule was December of 2027. The commission had given direction to the staff to move that up to, I think, sometime in 2024. We've now pushed that back a little bit so that we could really focus on how best to use risk information in some of the designs that we're going to get, and how to credit design maturity appropriately in the application process.
So does the 9-month extension likely flow through and tack on to the anticipated end date, or is it?
I'm hoping it's not a day-for-day slip. To tell you the truth, I'm hoping that the extra time that we're taking up at this stage in the process, that we can recover at least some of that in the final rule stage, because we'll have a more fully developed product.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
We wish you well, and this is, I think, a strong bipartisan area in a Congress in which strong bipartisan areas can be scarce. One of the reasons that I have been supportive of this innovation is the constant news that we're hearing out of the innovative community that these technologies will put them in a position to take the spent nuclear fuel, nuclear waste, for which America currently has no plan, and which is sitting on site in near nuclear facilities, because we don't even like to have it travel, and piling up. And it seems to me that the ability to take that resource and use it to power carbon-free generation is a pretty positive thing. And we have no better plan for the nuclear waste right now. And I'm concerned that the economics are going to be a problem. If we were United States of America Incorporated, we'd have a balance sheet, we'd have accountants, there'd be a report each year on the financial picture of the company, and in that financial picture would be the liability of cleaning up the nuclear waste mess. And whatever that number was, that number less $1 would be the incentive to get that problem solved, because it would be identified as an economic burden on the enterprise. The United States of America as a country doesn't operate that way. And my worry is that a small savings from using new fuel, as opposed to trying to address the spent fuel problem, will push the spent fuel technologies to the side, simply because the importance of dealing with the spent fuel won't be recognized in the equation in any way. And I'm worried if you're, first, are you aware of that problem? And is there any way in which the NRC is focused on trying to make sure that spent fuel innovations, spent fuel-based innovations, don't become orphaned by your process?
Yeah, thank you for that, Senator. I think we are focused to make sure that there aren't any parts of the fuel cycle that are orphaned. In our advanced reactor preparations, right, I've personally tried to emphasize with the staff the need to look at all parts of the fuel cycle and ensure that we have what I would call a regulatory line of sight for all of these parts of the fuel cycle. If all we're doing is focusing on regulating reactors, for instance, Senator, but we're forgetting fuel enrichment on the front end, or fuel fabrication, or spent fuel management, handling, reprocessing, I think, as you're suggesting on the back end, then we're potentially hampering the entire enterprise. So that has been a focus for me, and certainly the spent fuel management piece of that, whether it's storage or transportation or disposal, or, as you say, reprocessing. I think that should be
so you think you're going to be able to provide a level playing field for reprocessing innovation as well as new fuels innovation?
I believe we can.
Okay. Thanks, Chairman.
But thank you for your continued interest and leadership on these issues, Sheldon. Thank you very much. Senator Markey's joined us. Senator Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is responsible for ensuring a safe, effective, and efficient decommissioning process for nuclear power plants whose life expectancy has now been completed. And that includes the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station in Plymouth, Massachusetts. However, with its recent approval of the proposed decommissioning rule, I fear the NRC now stands for not recognizing concerns. The NRC has decided that the best way to shield itself from criticism around the decommissioning process is to take itself out of the process. In the latest version of the proposed decommissioning rule, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission would have no ability to approve, no ability to change, no ability to deny plants decommissioning proposals. Known as post-shutdown decommissioning activity reports, its only job would be to acknowledge receipt of the report. Our independent nuclear safety regulator would serve as a glorified filing cabinet, ceding the job of regulator to the nuclear industry itself is not a win for safety, for communities, or for the energy sector. Chairman Hanson, if the Nuclear Regulatory Commission doesn't need to formally approve nuclear plants' decommissioning plans, will anyone, the NRC or stakeholders, be able to meaningfully assess or address any issues in the accuracy, timeline, cost estimates, environmental impacts, or overall legitimacy of the plant's decommissioning proposals?
Senator, thank you. Our decommissioning processes are oriented around kind of one primary goal, and that is the ultimately greenfield release of the site. And the post-shutdown decommissioning activities report that you mentioned is supposed to outline the activities that our licensees are going to undertake to reach that goal over time. We establish in regulation what is required in that in that report, and if that report comes to us and is lacking in any way, we can direct our licensees to address those deficiencies and prohibit undertaking any decommissioning activities until, before those deficiencies are addressed. We also publish that report for review by the communities. We hold 2 public meetings and solicit public comments so that not only can we rely on our own review with regard to whether or not that report meets our regulations, but we can solicit input from the community about whether or not they think it meets our regulations.
So you're saying that you can and are authorized to require NRC approval of decommissioning plans? You're saying that's in your jurisdiction and you will have to approve the decommissioning plan? Is that what you're saying you're going to do?
It is not a formal approval, as you note. It is a review for consistency with our regulations.
Well, then, from my perspective, check the box exercises aren't enough. This needs to be a process that takes into account the accuracy of those plans, not just the completion of those plans, and that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has to sign off on it as part of the process. Otherwise, we wind up, closing the barn door after the horse is out, gone, and died of old age. We don't have the NRC playing a meaningful role in this process. Do you believe that anything in this proposed rule does anything to strengthen stakeholder involvement in the decommissioning process?
Senator, one of the areas that we added to this rule was we're making licensees conduct an analysis to ensure that their activities are going to be bounded by previous environmental assessments. If they are proposing any activities that are not bounded, that they have to, the NRC is going to provide a meaningful opportunity for public participation to review those activities and their relationship to these prior environmental analyses.
Is there a requirement to consider and respond to public comments? Is there a requirement to have public hearings on this decommissioning process?
We do have public meetings on the post-shutdown decommissioning activities report, and we solicit public comments on that report.
This would be after the utility, the industry had completed this process, so that there would be public input as to the adequacy of the work which was completed?
Well, the activities report happens at the beginning of the process. They're required to submit that to us 2 years prior to shutdown. The license termination plan would be, there is an environmental assessment conducted at that, and that's within 2 years of completion of all of the activities. And then The NRC oversees the activities in the interim.
Yeah, well, the problem is the comments that don't have to be responded to are considered are not meaningful if they're not going to be actually considered. It's like shouting into the wind if you're a community, that's concerned about what is taking place with this nuclear power plant and its decommissioning process. So I'm very concerned about this process as it is unfolding, and I would just absolutely, urge you, to ensure that there is full NRC and public participation, because the industry historically, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, has been known to cut corners, and ultimately we cannot allow the public safety to be put in jeopardy at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Stefano.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Thank you to all of you for your testimony and your work. Chairman Hanson, as a Michigan native yourself, I know you understand the importance of the Great Lakes to all of us. It's not only about our economy, it's really our way of life in Michigan. And it's protecting the Great Lakes is really in our DNA, as you know. So it's vital that we do everything we can to protect 95% of the country's fresh water, which surrounds us in Michigan. And that's why for years I've led bipartisan efforts to oppose Canadian proposals to bury low-level nuclear waste just off the shore of Lake Huron. Thankfully, they decided not to do that, and I appreciate the fact that they have not done that. But they are still considering a proposal to store highly radioactive waste at a site within the Great Lakes Basin that's only 30 miles from Lake Huron. So Michiganders are extremely, extremely concerned. I'm extremely concerned about this. Stopping the storage proposal is the right thing to do for the people of Michigan. It's the right thing to do for the people of Canada because the risk is just too great. And they have a lot of other possibilities of where they could create this storage facility. So Chairman Hanson, will you commit to work alongside our other federal partners and including the State Department to engage with our Canadian allies with the shared goal of protecting the Great Lakes from the risk of a nuclear accident?
Senator, thank you. As you said, as a native Michigander, I'm keenly interested and concerned with the long-term health and viability of the Great Lakes. And the NRC would be happy to support the State Department and other interagency partners in that. We also have a very strong relationship with our Canadian nuclear regulators. We believe they have a very mature and technically competent staff. We haven't interacted with them much on this issue, but if they wanted our consultation, we would be happy to provide it.
Well, I think it's really important that you do have that dialogue, and I have very much appreciated having multiple conversations with our Canadian friends, and there's no question that there's competency and sophistication and a lot of land in Canada. It does not have to be right next to the Great Lakes, and I think that's the point for all of us. Also, we have about 10,000 tons of spent nuclear fuel from 15 current or former U.S. power plants stored along the shores of the Great Lakes. And as the Biden administration has made clear, it's going to be hard to meet our near-term carbon reduction goals without nuclear power. But we have to make sure that these smaller nuclear storage facilities are sound. So it's critical that we work together on the most effective means of dealing with the waste, again, alongside our precious Great Lakes. And I would appreciate your comments, and can we count on you to work with us on this?
Yes, Senator, I think you can count on the NRC to make sure that the existing operating reactors continue to operate safely, and that the spent fuel stored on the Great Lakes is also stored safely. I was at DC Cook this last summer and had an opportunity to see the storage pad, and as they were preparing to move some of their spent fuel out of the pool and onto the pad this fall, I think Attorney General Nessel may have been for that spent fuel loading campaign, and was very interested to kind of learn about the stability and how they manage those facilities, and came away very reassured.
Good. Well, I appreciate very much. And again, we have a very, really what we view as a sacred trust in Michigan in protecting the Great Lakes, not only for us, but for the entire country. And it's very important that we look at these issues through the eyes of protecting those waters. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciated your comment about sacred trust. I think my colleagues and I feel that acutely every day in the mission that we set out to achieve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. While we're waiting for the chairman to return, he had to go over to finance. I'm going to exercise my discretion and ask another question. You know, I've been in these hearings now with the NRC probably, well, for my entire 6 years as a senator, and the management issues seem to always be the same. In response to Senator Lummis's question about what do you need, it was more, more resources for IT. Yet at the same time, if you look at some of the financial management practices, for instance, the NRC pays the GSA rent for space that is currently occupied by FDA. Apparently a decade ago, I understand that's before any of you all were there, the NRC signed a long-term lease for space that has never been fully utilized by the agency. And I missed your opening part when you talked about the blended workforce and flexible times. So, Chairman Hanson, how much does the agency pay GSA in rent for office space that the agency does not use? I mean, if you're looking for more resources, in my view, this would be a place that if you took that out of your overhead calculations, you might be able to pick up some of the additional IT requirements that you think you're going to need in the future. Nobody wants to take that. Huh?
Oh, I do, except I think Commissioner Wright's actually spoken, within the agency, has spoken very eloquently on this issue. I wanted to give him an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Wright?
So, Senator, thank you so much, and I couldn't agree with you more. You know, the fact that counts against us, we get no benefit from it at all, and in the end, there is our licensees end up paying part of this stuff too, right? So that's for something we don't get any benefit for. So I do think that if we can adjust that, and I think the total $6 million and change, so what we're talking about, which is about 1% of when you're looking at that, right?
Right. So how do you solve this problem? Can you get out from under the lease? Does the lease have to expire? I mean, what are your options here?
So that's why we're
how aggressively have you
to
pursued this? Yeah.
So I think that, and I will just go back in my confirmation hearing the last time, I did tell Senator Inhofe that if there was anything that we had issues or concerns about where the budget was concerned, we were going to come to y'all to ask for help. So we're searching for answers as well, and I think we're reaching out to you and to the others, and our CFO and everybody would be more than willing to discuss the best way. As I sit here right now, I can't tell you exactly. Do you know?
Well, Senator, that subsidy to FDA, as you call it, I think was put in place by the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And so we're looking at, and we want to engage your staff on specific ways that we might be able to address that going forward. It could be just as simple as a recategorization or maybe some other method. Well,
it would seem to me, I mean, I'm on Appropriations Committee as well. Mm-hmm. And the truth in budgeting and is not there. I mean, certain agencies, and I wouldn't necessarily categorically put you in this category, but certain agencies and commissions ask for money in certain areas, knowing full well that they want to come back in and reprogram this money into other areas that may be less politically viable or for other reasons. So I don't know that this is necessarily in this case, but I would say, now that I see Senator Padilla is here, I'll yield to him and get off my soapbox. But I will say, as we look at these blended workforces, as we look at more of our federal workforce that's not coming in full time, there is no reason that you all and others throughout the entire federal government should not be able to skinny down your physical space, your requirements for physical space, and if it's just as easy as a recategorization, it should be done. And so we'll be supportive of that, and I think taxpayers would be supportive of that, and it's smart. So, Senator Padilla, I'll open it up to you for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all of you. I have a couple of questions specifically for Chairman Hanson, but let me sort of set the stage. As I know you're familiar, California has one nuclear facility still in operation, but three that are in various stages of decommissioning. And those would be San Onofre, Rancho Seco, and Humboldt Bay. With the most recent action being the NRC's announcement that it has terminated the license for Humboldt Bay's Unit 3 and released the unit for the unit site for unrestricted use on November 18th. A transparent decommissioning process, I think we can all agree, and a clear understanding of its timeline is critical to not just operators and stakeholders, but to community members at large and local governments around these sites. Concerns about environmental health impacts, future use of these sites, etc. So with that as a lead-in, the first question is this, Mr. Chairman. Given that the NRC's historic role has been in regulating the operations of nuclear power plants rather than overseeing their decommissioning, how do you see the NRC meeting this expanded role of oversight regarding decommissioning activities, and what's being done internally to ensure that the NRC is ready to conduct a transparent and timely process?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for that. We really have had the opportunity because, while as you said, we've had an increasing number of decommissionings or plants entering decommissioning over the last several years, because all 26 didn't hit all at once. We've been able to shift staff gradually to focus on decommissioning. I call it kind of the three challenges that the agency currently has. You know, historically, we focused mostly on the safe operation of the current fleet, and we had kind of with regard to reactors, we had kind of that single mission. Well, now we're doing three things. We're getting ready for new technology. Of course, we're focused on the existing fleet, like Diablo Canyon, while it's still operating. And we're shifting our focus as well. We're pivoting, if you will, to decommissioning. And I think overall the agency's been quite successful in that regard in being able to review those shifts by our licensees to that new status.
So thank you. And just two comments before my next question. One, looking at not just shifting personnel to getting ready for new technology, as you said, current operations and decommissioning, sort of a new growing priority. But if there's capacity concerns, need for additional staffing and other resources to accommodate this shift, please let this committee know how we can be supportive of that. And second, just in thinking ahead on the decommissioning, my start was in local government before moving to state government, before coming to the U.S. Senate. So I know my colleagues in local government are anxious in many ways to, even if it's thinking 10, 20, 30 years ahead, what future use of these sites can and should be. Residential, maybe not quite the case, but for example, clean energy technologies, renewable energy sources, et cetera, to take advantage of existing tie-ins to transmission and distribution infrastructure, which is key for wind when appropriate, solar if and when appropriate, depending on that natural resource that's site-specific. So I wanted to plant that seed. The second question is this. Specifically on the issue of community interest and engagement, the NRC states that it quote, considers public involvement in and information about the NRC's activities to be a cornerstone of strong, fair regulation of the nuclear industry, end quote. So the question is, how do you see the NRC's role in facilitating local community stakeholders with the decommissioning process, specifically from beginning, but not just at the beginning, through until the end?
Thank you, Senator. As part of the implementation of the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act, we completed a study, if you will, or a report on best practices for community advisory boards. And we'd be happy to provide your office with that. And as part of the proposed decommissioning rule, My understanding is that we'll be putting those best practices for community engagement into guidance for our licensees. We also participate regularly in community advisory board meetings so that people have an understanding of what it is the agency's doing, how we're overseeing our licensees. I know the performance of spent fuel storage system at San Onofre is of significant concern to the community, and we've participated a great deal in the community advisory board there to talk about how our oversight, how we're overseeing the licensee and the licensee's monitoring program, how we're ground truthing the data that we're getting from the licensee about the performance of those systems. So that's just kind of one example. I don't know if my Commissioner Barron, if you want to
Sure.
jump
The only
in.
thing I'd add there is one of the things we've been interested in doing is making sure we provide flexibility for how all that's structured. So at some sites in the country, it's the company has set up an advisory panel and involved the local community. In other places, it's the state. The state legislature would pass legislation and establish it. I think that's what they did in Massachusetts and Vermont. So one of the things I think we've been careful to do is allow that flexibility. Different communities, different states are going to want to do it different ways, and we don't want to push them to do it any one particular way.
So, well, and just in closing, I would imagine it is done collaboratively with, in California, the legislature or the Public Utilities Commission and its counterparts in other states, other regulatory and oversight bodies to not just arrive at this stakeholder process, but formalize any commitments that are made as a result. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, welcome back.
Either one works. Thanks, Senator Padilla. Thanks for joining us. Senator Sullivan, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. And thank you to the commissioners. I had a question that I want to begin with about the U.S. Air Force's announcement in October that it picked Eielson Air Force Base in interior Alaska to host a first of its kind small nuclear reactor. The design, known as a micro-reactor, would reliably generate enough electricity to support round-the-clock operations at this remote but very strategic military base. It's going to be hosting over 2.5 squadrons of F-35s here in a couple months. And I'd like to get, Mr. Chairman, your views on this first, but A, on safety, right? Everybody wants to know about safety. But B, in remote communities in my state and other states that rely currently on fuel delivery, diesel generation, a lot of us see that this kind of micro reactor has potential to provide clean, reliable energy for decades to come. So what's the thinking on these micro reactors, not just the Eielson one, which I'm sure you're involved with, but the potential, and again, safety, but also energy costs. We're all experiencing very high energy costs right now in our country. A lot of it's self-inflicted wounds by the Biden administration. Some of their senior advisors are telling the American people, hey, we're driving up energy costs on your back to, quote, accelerate the transition to renewables. This is Gina McCarthy. Not very smart, in my view, really hurting American working families. But can you talk about the Eielson microreactor and the potential for remote communities to benefit? One idea that we thought about in Alaska, if you had the microreactor at Eielson, is there a possibility to actually have that not just power the base, but the surrounding communities? Fairbanks, for example, is nearby. And I'd love to hear from all the commissioners. The safety issue is a big one. Obviously, people have concerns about that.
Thank you, Senator. I'll speak to the Air Force part if I could first, then I'll talk more generally. We can all talk more generally about microreactors. I wanted to point out we have a long-standing relationship with the Office of Naval Reactors,
Right.
actually, to review some of their designs and their fuel formulations and so forth.
And by the way, that's an incredible office and legacy that we have in America. Not a lot of people know about it, starting with Admiral Rickover.
Yeah.
Just really remarkable.
Yeah, and now led by Admiral Caldwell,
Yeah.
of course. And Right. And so the NRC's been very pleased to provide, peer review and technical support and so forth. So we haven't heard from the Air Force, to my knowledge, but we'd be happy to do the same for them. And we'll make the appropriate.
So you think they should
staff
be
available.
giving you a call about the Eielson?
Well, we'll leave that. We'll leave that up to them. But
We can help make
We'll answer the call if the phone rings.
Okay.
Certainly. Microreactors themselves are very intriguing because of their small size and in many cases their passive safety features. And as you know, we've got one application in for the from Oklo for a microreactor, and we're actively engaged with them in reviewing that and understanding the safety features that they have with those. In many cases, kind of passive safety features, right? It doesn't have as many moving parts, so there aren't as many things to break or pay attention to. And I think the other thing that's interesting across the advanced reactor spectrum is this focus on fuels. So part of what makes microreactors so interesting and viable for remote communities, not that remote, obviously, Fairbanks, we can, is the long-term core. So, you're every day, the reactors in Senator Carper's across the bay there in New Jersey, they'll refuel every 18 months to 2 years, say. Some of these microreactors don't have to be refueled for 10 or even 20 years, depending on the fuel formulation. So that has the potential, as you point out, to bring down the delivered cost of energy, which of course I know is of great concern to Alaskans.
And safety.
And yeah,
just safety in general on these microreactors. What's your assessment?
We're still looking at we still have a number of these concepts under review. So I don't know that I'm ready to make I don't know that we're ready to make a formal declaration, but I think the passive safety features are intriguing and I think hold a lot of promise.
Any other commissioners want to comment?
Yeah, the only thing I'd just add there, and then maybe Commissioner Wright has a point too. This is a big area as we establish the framework for advanced reactors. This is one of the tricky pieces that we need to get right, because the existing fleet, these are really large reactors, right? They're 1,000 megawatt reactors. Now we're talking about designs that are maybe a megawatt, and you're not going to have the same requirements, for a 1 megawatt reactor that's advanced as you would for a 1,000 megawatt light water reactor. And having a rule that can cover the big ones, but also something as small as a microreactor is what the staff is really focused on. And it's tricky because we want to make sure it's open to all the different technologies and the different sizes. And it's different than we have in the existing fleet.
Great. Commissioner Wright, do you have any thoughts on this?
So personally, I'm a real fan of this. Just the idea, intuitively, you would think they're safer. And the jury's still out. We're still, as the chairman said, there's national security implications with this for sure. Benefits for us, as well as if we own it and we sending it out as from us, then we control that, right? So there's grid security potential advantages to it. There's reliability, stability, resilience that you can work to, or independence, just like they're trying to do in some of these areas. So I'm looking forward to getting one of these things through the process and letting it get to market. I can't wait for it.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Thanks for joining very much. Senator Duckworth, I think, may be joining us on WebEx. Senator Duckworth, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't come back to the hearing. I'm pinging back and forth between hearings.
I know that feeling. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you to the commissioners for being here today. There may be few other states that better understand the NRC's critical importance to nuclear safety than Illinois. After all, Illinois possesses more nuclear generating capacity than any other state. And last year, nuclear power plants accounted for 58% of my state's in-state electricity generation. On the positive side, nuclear power has played an important role in expanding production of zero-emission, clean energy sources. However, the inability to implement a permanent storage solution for our nation's nuclear waste hinders our ability to effectively decommission nuclear power reactors, and worse, harms local communities located near such stranded sites that no longer generate power or revenue but still store nuclear waste. Shortly after joining the Senate in 2017, I traveled to the city of Zion, Illinois, and witnessed the adverse financial and social impacts resulting from Zion's proximity to a stranded site. Congress should better serve communities that suffer a devastating 1-2 punch of first losing a significant economic driving force and then being forced to serve as a de facto interim storage site. That is why I wrote the Sensible Timely Relief for America's Nuclear Districts Economic Development Act of 2021, which is also known as the Stranded Act. My bipartisan bill would provide the city of Zion and other similarly situated communities across the country with financial assistance to offset the harmful impacts of a stranded nuclear waste site. Chairman Hanson, given the NRC's extensive expertise and experience with the decommissioning process, can you share your view on why the public would benefit from the programs and funding contained in the bipartisan Stranded Act?
Senator, thank you. I also appreciate the hybrid nature of our interactions here. We're striving for this at the NRC too, with the reentry of the staff. So it's nice to see you virtually. As you recognize, Senator, the NRC's focus is really on protecting people in the environment. It's really focused on public health and safety and security. And so we're not going to have necessarily a direct role in some of the issues you raised, but I think one of the most important things that the NRC can do is actually oversee and ensure the safe and timely and secure cleanup of these decommissioning sites, so that ultimately, I think, as I mentioned to Senator Markey, that they become available for unrestricted use into the future, so that they can be used for any number of purposes.
Thank you. Well, helping these communities, these stranded communities, is an urgent environmental justice priority. And it's why, beyond just passing my bill, I'm also focused on what immediate relief the NRC could provide, or what specific authorities Congress could empower the NRC with to deliver such help. My understanding is that despite the NRC maintaining legal oversight that you've mentioned over a stranded nuclear waste site, the Commission is significantly limited in its statutory authority to assist my constituents in Zion and others throughout the country that are struggling with the preparations leading up to and the aftermath of a decommissioned facility. Chairman Hanson, what would be the most effective additional authorities to empower the NRC to achieve environmental justice goals and better support communities that our country is essentially forced to serve as dumpsters for nuclear waste?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for that. I want to give you an answer, and then I want to give maybe Commissioner Barron an opportunity, because he's spoken a lot about environmental justice. We have a review ongoing within the agency with regard to environmental justice, a comprehensive review of our policies and programs with a view towards environmental justice, and that would certainly include decommissioning. That we're expecting the conclusions of that review to come to the Commission in, I think, January or February here of 2022. We'd be happy to follow up with you about that. So it may be a little premature for me to say what I think our additional legislative authorities are, but we'd be happy to follow up with you or your staff going forward. So,
thank you.
And I think the chairman gave a very good overview of it. I think all of us are approaching it with an open mind. We've asked the staff to take several months, talk to a large number of stakeholders and gather ideas. What are other federal agencies doing? We know a lot of federal agencies right now are focused on environmental justice, and some of those ideas may make sense for NRC, some of them may not. But the staff's pulling together. They've gotten just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments and talked to a lot of stakeholders, tribes. They've held panels to gather information. Talk to some of the folks that maybe haven't interacted as much with NRC in the past and see what they think about what NRC should be doing on environmental justice. And I appreciate you flagging this issue. I'm not sure how much focus there's been on that in this environmental justice conversation. And I think it's an important aspect. We're looking forward, I think, all of us to see what does the staff come up with? What are the options? Are there any that require new legal authorities or really changes in the way the agency has operated? And that's coming, and we're, I think, all very open-minded and focused on doing something there that, I think we want to improve what the agency's done on environmental justice. I, for one, think we need to ask those tough questions and be bold. And I thank you for flagging another area for us to look at there.
Thank you. I look forward to following up with you both. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Senator Duckworth, thanks for very much for your involvement on these on this issue. It's an important issue and your leadership. I have a couple of questions for our chairman and our commissioners. And one of those deals with NRC funding. I think we've had some conversations about that already. I've been in and out, so I missed a couple of some of the questions. But the NRC's work to help maintain the safety and the security of our nation's nuclear power facilities and materials ensures that nuclear power can continue to provide safe, zero-emission power for our nation. And for the NRC to do its job, the agency must be able to hire the best and brightest, be equipped to keep up with the industry's innovation and new technologies which we're witnessing. At the same time, the NRC must be nimble and adapt to COVID and other workforce challenges. In NEMA, you'll recall Congress put spending limits on how much the NRC could spend on human capital, on IT and building costs, commonly known as corporate support. In your testimony, again, this is for Chairman Hanson. In your testimony, I believe you mentioned that the NRC is having difficulty meeting these limits. And would you just talk a little bit more with us about those difficulties and what it may mean in terms of the NRC meeting its mission? And to follow up with that, have the COVID workforce challenges and the prospect of new advanced nuclear reactors changed your view on the importance of corporate support? Please.
Senator, thank you. First, I want to say that collectively as a commission, we take the corporate support caps very seriously, and we have strived to meet them. So it's not something that we undertake lightly to say that we're having difficulty in meeting those. We've reduced corporate support spending over the last 6 or 7 years by over $100 million and by well over 100 staff. So we've taken reductions, and I think where we're getting to is we're reaching the limit of those reductions. A couple of key areas I think I may have mentioned to Senator Lummis and Senator Capito that I'd like to highlight in that would be in our IT function. IT costs, as you know, particularly you, Senator Capito, from the Appropriations Committee, are rising across the government. And yet the need to invest in modernization and new technology kind of continues apace. Most agencies across the government invest probably 7 to 8% of their IT spending in modernization, and that is in new tools and new capabilities. The NRC's around the 2 to 3% mark. And we could do that for the last couple of years, but that's starting to catch up with us, particularly as we have a hybrid workforce and as we train up to want to take on the challenges of licensing advanced reactors and wanting some of those advanced computing tools and other tools available to us. The other area is really in our HR, which also falls into the corporate support. I've learned recently that we talked about the under 30 cohort. I spoke about this with Senator Cardin earlier in the hearing about how we're about 3% under 30 right now within the agency, and that we really need to work on that to have the workforce of the future. And we have an apprenticeship program in the agency that we started a couple of years ago. Well, we would be able to expand that if we had additional resources in our HR function, for example, and could more aggressively tackle that problem. One of the things we want to accomplish in our workforce is to have some overlap between the new people and the more experienced folks with the institutional knowledge so that they can transmit that knowledge and culture as they head off into retirement. So these are kind of some of the challenges. I don't know if Commissioner Wright or Commissioner Barron want to speak about this a little bit as well, but it's been a subject of a lot of conversation among the three of us.
Yeah, and I think there's broad agreement between the three of us on it. I agree with everything the chairman said. I just flag a couple things. You know, with the agency, we talked about this earlier, kind of an aging workforce. We have probably 6, 7, 8% of the agency turnover every year. So just to kind of keep our staff at the current level, that's a couple hundred people we have to hire. And right now we struggle actually with HR to actually hire that many in terms of having the resources there to do it. And that's just kind of to stay flat and be ready for everything that's coming down. The other area I would flag, just where I think basically the corporate support cap has had an unintended consequence in terms of our inability to make an investment that could save money down the road is actually something we were talking about earlier with Senator Capito, which is space planning, right? One of the things we would want to be able to do, for example, is say, let's have the upfront cost to renovate a floor of our building. If we do that, we can take up less space, frees up other space, we get rent savings. We've found that there are times with the budget we just actually don't have the corporate dollars to do that renovation that would make sense as an efficiency and just improving, kind of the quality of the experience for the staff too. But we can't capture those savings down the road because we can't make the upfront investment and still meet the corporate cap. So I really appreciate that you all are focused on this. I know it's, you all on a bipartisan basis want us to focus on corporate support. We've done that. And now we're at the point where it's starting to create some challenges.
Senator Capito has another question or comment that she'd like to add, and I have one or two more questions. I want to follow up on the apprenticeship program that you mentioned, but Senator Capito, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the three of you for being here today. Learned a lot, and I think we have a lot of things we can work on together, so I look forward to that. I'm hoping that President Biden heeds our call to have 2 more commissioners nominated so we can have a full boat in front of us. I would like to make a brief note prior to leaving the meeting. The NRC's career staff provides invaluable scientific and technical advice. They do not make policy decisions. Policy decisions are made by the Commission. NRC staff do propose recommendations for the Commission to approve or disapprove proposals that are grounded in the NRC's statutory authority. The staff should be able to make recommendations in an unbiased manner without fear that a member of the Commission will take to social media to suggest that staff recommendations are designed to weaken or roll back nuclear safety. Commissioners should not use social media to call into question the motives behind the staff's recommendations. I'm concerned that a Commissioner's recent and persistent social media comments will have an adverse impact on NRC career staff's unbiased works. I hope that all members of the Commission will consider how their social media activity may influence and threaten the objectivity of professional NRC's staff work. I appreciate that, and I would like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record my March 26th letter with you, Chairman Carper, to President Biden requesting those nominations of 2 members, and a November 22nd letter from the American Nuclear Society and Nuclear Industry Council regarding the importance of a full commission.
Good. Without objection, so ordered.
And thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is an important hearing. I'm glad we could have it.
Thank you.
I want to come back. I think, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned apprenticeship programs. And we have mentorships. We have probably every senator on this committee has interns in our offices back home and here as well. I am a big fan of apprenticeships. Tell us a little bit about your apprenticeship program. How long have you had it? How's it working?
Well, we revived it here just 2 years ago, and we took a cohort of 22 recent engineering graduates, and it's a 2-year program where each of those graduates cycles around in 3 to 6 month assignments around the agency. So they're touching a lot of different areas that the agency works in, everything from medical technologies to reactor operations and so forth, so that when they're done then and they find a home in the organization, they have a broader sense and a lot of experience with the overall NRC mission. And we're just coming, I think, to the end, and we're starting a new cohort now on that. You mentioned internships, Senator. We also have an intern program, a summer intern program for students.
I presume that's a paid internship?
What's that?
Paid?
Yes, paid internship, absolutely. And we also have co-op for engineering students where they can take, a semester off, come work for us, and then go back and finish their studies as well. Mm-hmm. So we're really fully utilizing all of those mechanisms to bring people into the agency.
Could you comment all on?
Can I add something?
Yeah. I'm going to stay on apprenticeship, so we'll just hold your horses just for a second.
Yes.
One of the things we try to be mindful of as we're recruiting interns is diversity. And any thoughts anybody could make on that front, please?
If you don't mind, I'll pick up from here.
Please.
So first off, it's a very diverse group, and they're very active as well. They are not shy. And in fact, we learned a lot from them when we started the program back a couple of years ago. We had a group of 4 of them who actually came up to my office and talked about where the NRC was missing out. Because when they were recruiting some of the people at their, when they were applying for internships or for the NRAN program or whatever, we weren't getting back to them soon enough, and other agencies were coming and picking, they were taking the cream of the crop. And they were saying the NRC is missing that opportunity. So it actually helped us kind of refocus on how we went about this, and I think it's been very successful. And I'm really excited because there's a couple of them right now that I'm following their career as they go.
All right, thank you. Anything else on this point?
Well, with regard to diversity, Senator, we take the diversity, the need to have a diverse apprenticeship class and internship class very seriously. I think this recent group of apprentices was culturally and ethnically diverse, but we could have done better on the gender balance. So I've asked our HR people to take a closer look at that and how we're approaching women graduates of some of the engineering and other programs around the country to make sure that those folks know that the NRC is a good place to work with an important mission.
That's great. Good, thank you. A question, if I could, for Commissioner Barron and Commissioner Wright. We've learned a lot about the nature of work throughout the course of the coronavirus pandemic. And we know that the NRC needs to be able to adapt and remain flexible in order to maintain the safety as well as the security of its operations and its ability to carry on the agency's regulatory responsibilities. While some aspects of the NRC's work can adapt to remote operations, some do not adapt. And for example, safety and security inspections at nuclear facilities cannot be conducted generally over Zoom. And with new variants of COVID-19 still emerging, would you share any lessons learned from the NRC's responses to the coronavirus pandemic, both from an operation and a regulatory perspective, and any challenges you are expecting as we move forward? Anyone like to lead that off?
Sure, I'm happy to. One of the things that I think we, as an agency, learned from the pandemic period is just how valuable the technology was. I mean, I think we were fortunate that our IT folks had really been forward-thinking, and we were in a position where everyone, for example, every employee had a laptop ready to go, and you could transfer and have your workstation at home. And that's something, if it had all happened a few years earlier, we wouldn't have been ready for. And so I think overall as an agency, we functioned very well, even at the 100% remote. We took advantage of new technologies at the plants, right? So we had, many licensees would give our resident inspectors laptops with data that they could use on plant performance that really helped if you weren't there all the time. One of the things I think we learned where we want to get back to where we were is on the inspections, as you mentioned. And, I think there was this growing appreciation from the inspectors, the managers throughout the agency that there's no substitute for having people on the ground at the plants with an NRC hard hat walking around. Remote inspections, they were, I think good enough for the period where we needed it, but not as good as when we have people there in person. The ability to walk down the equipment, to just look and say, that doesn't look quite right, and then pursue it. To talk to the folks, working there and hear if they have any concerns. So I think that's been one of the lessons. There's a lot we can do with technology, and then there are some really kind of core principles I think we've learned are super important in terms of having people there, eyes on equipment, and available to talk to folks.
Thank you. So if you want to look at examples of successes where being a risk-informed regulator is, you look no further than just what happened during COVID and how the agency responded. Personally, I'll remind you of this. My confirmation hearing was when Chris and I were here. It was the next day that the world shut down. So
is that like cause and effect, do you think?
yeah, and we do apologize for that. But anyway, there are many things that we've done that hopefully we can learn how to carry some of it forward. I agree with Commissioner Barron that nothing beats boots on the ground. The real live person being there helps. But But because of COVID, our inspectors were given real-time access via computer to the plant. And so there's some things, if there was an event or something that they did not need to respond to right away, they had access to it via computer, and they could come in hours later, next morning, or something like that. We were able to do hybrid inspections, virtual inspections, or real-time inspections in person. So we've learned how to do things, and we've learned how to be adept and nimble, as you mentioned earlier, sir. And but there are some things we can learn, and I know that we've empowered a group to go do that and try to figure it out. So hopefully we'll have some updates for you.
All right, well, good. Thanks for that. Last question is just, I want to know if you have any additional thoughts, maybe a question you were not asked, which you had been, and let us know what that question is and how would you answer it. But we'll start with you, Mr. Chairman, and then Mr. Barron, and finally wrap up with Commissioner Wright. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator, Mr. Chairman. People who hear me talk around the agency kind of know that I like to start and finish all my speeches with thank yous, so I think I'll do that today. I wanted to thank you for having us and the opportunity to appear before you, and I think this really productive, discussion this morning, so thank you. I wanted to thank my colleagues for their friendship and their professionalism and their insights. As several people have noted this morning, we function. We were designed for 5, and we benefit always from the additional perspectives. Although I think I have to say, among the 3 of us, we're accomplishing the mission and we're getting things done. And then finally, I wanted to thank the NRC staff. As Commissioner Wright noted, we shut down right in March of 2013, and the staff pivoted to work remotely almost immediately. Not least of all because of some very fortunate and forward-thinking IT investments that we made that allowed everybody to take their laptops home and work from home and accomplish the mission and figure out new ways of doing things. And they've been equally professional and flexible in moving to this new hybrid work environment that we've undertaken in the last month or so as well. So I couldn't be prouder. Really to come to work every day and serve alongside my fellow commissioners and to lead this agency, and I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks for those words, Mr. Barron.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything the chairman said, and in terms of the compliment of the commission, it is great. It's always great to be at 5. I've been on the commission long enough. I've been around for 3. I've been around for 4. I've been around for 5. As long as we have quorum, it's good, and there's no issue there. But I would just echo what the chairman said, that the 3 of us all have terrific working relationships. I think we're doing a lot of good work. We're getting a lot of...
Some of us remember a time when it wasn't quite that way.
And
this is refreshing.
That those days are well behind us. It's just a really great collegial environment. I think everyone is focused on the mission, and we have a terrific staff at the agency, as the chairman said. And I think we're working very well together and getting a lot of work done. So we appreciate your support and we appreciate your interest.
You bet. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Wright.
Thank you, Senator. Everything that my colleagues have spoken is true. But again, I want to reiterate 2 things. One for them to their staffs. I appreciate my staff. They are awesome. They make me look good. They keep me educated and up to speed. They have not missed a beat during this whole telework program, as have my fellow commissioners' staffs, and our staffs work very well together. As you know, we can only get together 1-on-1, but they can throw down 3-on-3 right now, and hopefully it'll be 5-on-5 at some point. The staff of the NRC, from the EDO shop all the way down to the person who cleans the floors and runs the security guard gates, they are incredible people. They're dedicated, they're passionate, and from where I sit, they are very appreciated. And I thank you for the opportunity to recognize them publicly.
You bet. I'm reminded by your comments about a story. I don't know if it was a NASA story in Florida or maybe in Houston, but we're preparing to, as a country, to put a man on the moon. And someone was visiting this NASA operation. The guy had an evening meeting, and they got there, and they couldn't find the right place for the meeting. And we're kind of looking around. This guy was looking around and came across someone from the custodial staff. And he said to the custodian, he said, what do you do here, sir? And the custodian said, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. Isn't that great? Helping to put a man on the moon. So folks, all the folks, including right here, the people who help make sure that this place is, the building, the Capitol itself is presentable and just an attractive place to live and work and visit. So we appreciate everybody over at the NRC and the folks that you lead. We try to emulate your collegiality here on this committee. We report out this last year unanimously bipartisan infrastructure legislation on roads, highways, bridges, climate, on water, drinking water, wastewater, flood water, and unanimously. Most people in this country wouldn't believe that we would do that, but we do. That doesn't always sell newspapers, so. But it's we admire the way that you've evolved over as a commission over the last decade, and we seek to emulate what you're doing. I want to thank each of you for helping us to better understand the NRC's important work and what we can do to better support this important agency. As I said earlier, well-functioning nuclear industry is critical to the future of our economy. I think it's critical to the future of our planet. And we look forward to continuing our work together in order to ensure that this future, our future, and our children, grandchildren's future is realized. Before we adjourn, there's some housekeeping work. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit for the record a variety of materials that include letters from stakeholders and other materials that relate to today's nomination hearing. And one other unanimous consent request. I hear no objection to that first request. Since there's no other senator here, unless I object to my own request, it would be affirmed. But one other unanimous consent request for today's business meeting. At this morning's business meeting, committee favorably reported the nomination of Jennifer Clyburn Reed of South Carolina to be federal co-chair of the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission, and Amanda Howe of Virginia to be Assistant Administrator for Mission Support of the Environmental Protection Agency. And I would ask unanimous consent that the record accurately reflect the number of their presidential nomination, and they are presidential nomination 957 for Ms. Reed and presidential nomination 633 for Ms. Howe. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Let's see if there's anything else here. And getting back to this hearing, before we close, senators, members will be allowed to submit questions for the record through the close of business on Wednesday, December the 15th. We'll compile those questions. We'll send them to our witnesses, to you, and ask you to reply by Wednesday, December 29th. And anything else that y'all would like to add, take away? Hearing none. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you all very much.